And it's a wonderful pleasure to have James F. Gauss, author, lecturer, here today. He's no stranger to the folks here in Rochester. You've heard him speak here before. He kept audiences enthralled for hours on end throughout Minnesota. We're just so glad to be speaking with him today. And James F. Gauss, you can find his work online at ampatriot.wordpress.com. I'll just say that again, ampatriot.wordpress.com. And his books are also available on Amazon, of course, but also christianbooks.com and Barnes and Noble. You might also look at his own blog, Books by Gauss, Gauss, booksbygauss.wordpress. And he'll be setting up a new website soon, and we'll be sure to include the link below in the description to this video for people to check out his work online. And he's here today to discuss a book he wrote some years ago. I think he said it was 8 years ago or so, but it's Revelation 18 and the Fate of America. Very timely message for us in this unusual election infection that we've just witnessed. And I wonder if we're going to get into some of that about the disease modalities that are mentioned in chapter 18. What do you have in store for us today, Dr. Gauss? Thank you.
Well, glad to be with you, Wes, once again. And yeah, I just describe a little bit about how that book came about. Actually, about 10 years ago, I was getting ready for bed, and I just felt impressed by the Lord to look at and read Revelation 18. Well, Revelation is not a book of the Bible that I'm real excited about, even though I've read it many times. I don't go and study it, so to speak. And so I didn't remember what the chapter 18 was about in Revelation. And so I picked up a Bible and I started reading through it, and felt like to me that every verse I read, the Spirit of God was just saying to me, this is America, this is America. And I was kind of horrified by that kind of input. And I kind of prayed about it and put it aside actually for about 3 years. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to do anything with it because it was too disturbing for me, because if it truly was referring to America, we were in very big trouble. So anyway, after about 3 years, I finally couldn't resist it any longer. And I finally started putting down what I felt was being given to me as thoughts. And I went through that, and anyway, I wound up self-publishing a book because nobody else wants to publish it. And this one's kind of marked up because it's my copy, so I've been doing a little revision on it, and I'm going to bring it up to date with the 2021 situation. But in that book, the first thing I introduce is I provide the history of ancient Babylon and give some people some background and footing on that. But then I go into describing how, according to chapters 14, 16, 17, and 18 in Revelation, there's certain characteristics of this new mystery Babylon. And most biblical scholars refer to it as the rise of the old Babylon, the rise of the Catholic Church, any number of different scenarios they present. And there's only a handful of people that believe that it might be referring to the United States, because the United States obviously is not in scripture anywhere that we can see. But does that mean it doesn't exist at the end times, or what? So anyway, in the early part of the book, I described the characteristics of this mystery Babylon. And if you will go along with me, I'll try to describe each of the characteristics. I have to refer to my notes because it's quite lengthy here, but it's interesting that, it refers to Babylon as being a city, but you have to understand that even in the Old Testament, Babylon was considered to be a city state. In other words, it was both a city and a country, a nation. And so this mystery Babylon, even though it's referred to as a city in the book of Revelation, the power ascribed to it is ascribed to that which will be a country, not a city, and that because it has such an impact on the world. And so one of the characteristics that's mentioned about this new Mystery Babylon is that she made all the nations drink of the wine of her own fornication. And when you think about the United States and the power that it has developed over the centuries, it influences everything in the world. I mean, it impacts everything that happens in the world, no matter where the nation is, how big or small the nation is. Everybody looks to America for influence, for marketability, you name it. America is at the top of the heap as far as influence. Now, some may argue that that influence is waning, and it certainly is, but the damage has already been done as far as America's influence in the world, and I'll point that out here a little bit later. The other characteristic it talks about is that this Mystery Babylon is divided into 3 parts. Well, some Bible scholars say, well, this just illustrates Babylon's total destruction. But when you think about it, the 3 parts it talks about is that this 3 parts of Babylon has great influence. Well, when you think about the United States, what are our 3 parts that have influence? The executive, legislative, and the judicial. Controls everything. Dictates to the public what is going to happen, what will happen, and what can happen, and that dictates to the world as well. So, excuse me. The third characteristic, it says, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made to drink or get drunk of her fornication. When you think of all the perversion that the United States has come up with in the last century, you might say, and has actually exported to the rest of the world, and I'll just highlight a few of them. One is obviously the abortion issue that came about in 1973 with Roe versus Wade. Such a heinous law of the land that was perpetrated on the American people, and the churches, for the most part, were silent on the whole issue. In fact, today, a lot of the churches are complacent and complicit with the issue of abortion. Well, you know, the United States so far has killed over 62 million innocent babies in the womb or newly born, however you want to look at it. But we haven't been content with do that within our own borders. We've exported this heinous crime to the rest of the world, so that 1.6 billion babies have been killed worldwide because of us. And I look at that and say, how can God ever forgive that? I mean, abortion, if you look at the Old Testament, abortion is akin to child sacrifice. And child sacrifice is something that God abhors, and he destroyed nations for it.
It's
even the
literally
Jews.
When they're harvesting stem cells and basically marketing baby parts and baby brains, it's a literally child sacrifice to harvest for financial gain or scientific research or making a vaccine.
Right.
It's all in there, what you're saying. Yeah.
Whatever the reason or excuse, it's heinous. I mean, the tearing apart of body parts, and like you said, and marketing them for profit, it's just beyond my imagination. And you know, if God overlooks that, then he's not a God of justice. And so we're going to pay a price eventually. And just as an aside real quick, excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat, that I believe God gave us a little bit of a reprieve with the Trump presidency because of his stand against abortion and support of pro-life. But now we've gone back into the darkness, and Biden has said that he's going to make abortion the law of the land. He's going to codify Roe versus Wade. Well, what does that mean? Codify Roe versus Wade. It means to enshrine it so that the Supreme Court can never overturn it. And
isn't it astonishing to think that these people who are actually harming seniors in nursing homes and murdering babies and calling for that why would we trust them with a vaccination to cure a pandemic? These are people who don't have any respect for life or the dignity of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would highly advise anybody who's thinking about the vaccine, they better do some homework before they submit to it, because it's not what it's being put out there as. And there's some very serious concerns about it and very potential consequences that they need to know about before they or their families take the vaccine. So, and I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not proclaiming that, but I've done a lot of research and I know what's going on out there. And they need to know for sure what this vaccine is all about. And they've actually admitted now the vaccine is not a cure-all, and the vaccine may not do anything for new strains of the coronavirus. And, you know, on and on and on, the excuses go. And they're getting us ready for yet another run of this stuff. And, you know, now Dr. Fauci's talking about, well, you need to wear 2 masks.
Why not 3?
Yeah, why not? Why not just an iron helmet, you know, covering your whole head, you know? I mean, this is getting so absurd, and it amazes me that you go outside anywhere and 95% of the people are wearing masks. I'm saying, where's your intelligence? Where's your common sense, you know? Is this the way you want to live the rest of your life? You know, I haven't worn a mask in 78 years and I'm not going to start now.
I might mention another one of these perversions that are exported into the world. You're mentioning the abortion issue, really powerful, and also the transgender stuff that we're apparently going to be paying for, some transgender information that'll be given out in Pakistan or somewhere on the other side of the world. I don't know where that's going. But another thing is just our pop culture. I mean, if Biden had Lady Gaga singing at his selection, whatever that was. If that's the epitome of what you think our culture is, look closely at the lyrics to her songs, and it's not even, you know, the only thing I can say for her on the positive side is she writes her own music and she is a talented musician, but what she does with it is unfortunate. It's not normal. In my view. But these things that Babylon exports to the world is something that the kings drink of, and then the businessmen, in verse 11, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. That's that this economic center of activity is so destroyed.
Right, and we can, you know, see that happening right now, particularly since Biden has only been in office for a week. Already there are countries talking about avoiding certain companies and so forth because they were Trump supporters or whatever, or they are conservative or whatever it is. The whole excuse me, the whole intent of the Democratic administration is to destroy what has been set in motion to try to overturn decades of destruction of the American economy, and basically at the hand of supporting China and building up its economy. I mean, the numbers are astronomical when you go and look at the economic data since Clinton made China a favored nation as far as a trade partner. We've had literally probably $15 trillion or more in trade deficits that have money that's gone abroad that'll never come back. And that's one of the reasons we have such a severe national debt.
They destroyed our manufacturing base, destroyed our job base. And then these, we seem to have very high-minded liberal politicians who and a lot of ladies who don't mind purchasing their cheap clothing that's been made by prison camp labor or child labor on the other side of the planet, as long as they can afford to shop at Walmart and the prices are low enough that even they can afford them, then they're fine with that. But we can't have something made in America. And verse 12 through verse 15 talks about all of the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, pearls, fine linen and purple and silk, scarlet and all thine wood, wood which would have a special use in ceremonies, vessels, precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, oil, fine flour, wheat, and it goes on and on about what happens with the merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing.
Yeah.
So sorry.
I mean, the whole world depends on American commerce. Let's face it. I mean, Americans are big consumers, consumers to the excess. We love our luxuries. You know, when I lived abroad for a while, my wife and I, and it amazed me at how little other people can live with, you know, very few things that are essential. And we began to see how we could live with just the essentials. And in America, we're not prepared for any economic downturn that would disrupt our economy or our lifestyle. And we're so far above where you might say subsistence living is that we would have a hard time on a day-to-day basis, you know, for the most of Americans.
We really take those blessings for granted that we flip the light switch and the lights go on. Have you lived? I've lived without water and electricity, running water. You've been in those situations too, so you don't take it for granted like most Americans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, the other thing is that one in verse 4, when I was reading this for the first time, verse 4 talks about to come out of her, so you don't participate in her plagues and her judgment. And I thought of that, holy mackerel, does that mean leaving the United States and getting somewhere else? And initially I thought that was the case, but now as I've looked at it a second time or many times, I think basically what that verse is saying, do not participate in her sins. Do not come out of her spiritually, and do not participate in her sins, so you do not participate in her judgment. And I think that's where the church is failing here.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of churches are participating in the sins of America.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stand up for righteousness anymore. They don't stand up for the true gospel of Jesus Christ. They don't stand up for truth and justice. More than likely, they adhere themselves to the culture and to what the government is telling them to do. I mean, vis-a-vis, I mean, just what's happened with this pandemic. What did the churches do? What was their response?
Mm-hmm.
Did they stand strong and say, no, we're going to stay open so we can be there for prayer and counsel and support for our people? No, they closed up tight.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some of them had online services and stuff like that, but that's
Not till later on.
That's not the church.
Yeah, they closed down and they rolled out the closure in Minnesota, you know, the week before Easter. And then it was a hard lockstep smackdown. It was, you must not celebrate Easter. And I know there were other things happening, you know, clandestine, other religious groups were having meetings in Rochester. There were things that weren't shut down, but the churches, you absolutely must not go to Christmas services. You shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July. We've been shut down really the whole year long, even as they roll out other new holidays. But you weren't supposed to celebrate Thanksgiving with your family. You aren't supposed to have weddings, funerals, graduations. Our entire civilization, our entire culture, civic and religious, was shut down. Going on a year now, we're in this lockdown.
Yeah. And it's not going to change, because under the current administration, they're going to continue to enhance that.
Mm-hmm.
And for us and our family, we just ignored that. We got together and we've not been wearing masks. We go wherever we want. And if they don't want us in there without a mask, fine, you don't need our business. We can go somewhere else. And we found a church that was open and is preaching the word. And so this is going to dramatically change the Christian foundation. And I believe God is going to call his remnant together, those that are truly believers that are going to stand up for righteousness' sake.
Could I read three verses from chapter 18, because they seem really applicable to what we're going, when you think about how Davos, the meeting in June, the World Economic Summit, they openly said that COVID-19 is the opportunity to reset the economy, right? So in chapter 18, verse 17, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate.
Yes.
All commerce, the shelves are becoming empty in some shops. We're noticing that the supply chains are breaking down. And that's the intention of the Great Reset, right?
Well, we saw a little inkling of that with this quote pandemic, how quickly life changed in 2020. I mean, the first 2 months, everybody was happy and fully employed and things are going along, and wham, all of a sudden things are shut down. Can't find toilet paper. Went into the stores, couldn't find any deli session open or anything like that. Couldn't find meat or cheese or eggs. I'm thinking, what is this? I'm 78 years old. I've never seen this in this country. What, have become a third world country all of a sudden overnight?
Right.
And but so that's kind of a little inkling of what things could get to be like. But here's the kicker. We've heard a lot of rattling about EMP attacks.
Mm-hmm.
What is an EMP attack? Electronic pulse, okay? We're a rogue nation, rogue actors of any kind, and there's plenty of them out there, shoot a rocket up with a nuclear device on it over our atmosphere, knock out our power grid, our computers, our transportation, everything. This has been known for decades, but nothing's been done about it. There's been experts that have been trying to warn the government about doing something, and Trump was starting to do that. But now that's all shut down. Who are the bad actors out there? Name them. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, you name it. They're all lining up and chomping at the bit now that they see that our defenses have been taken down, so to speak. Could that be the 1 hour scenario? Absolutely. It would shut down the whole financial picture, everything. And it could be not for days or weeks. It could be for months. It could be for years. If you think about that, not to get too scary, but you think about that, that shuts down your food supply, your water, your electric, your heat, your air conditioning, your transportation, because all the newer cars in the last couple of decades are computer operated. No train or airplane transportation, nothing, absolutely nothing. And America is not prepared to do that because the whole electrical grid is tied in across the country. I think Texas is the only state that has an isolated electric grid.
And now Joseph, I call him Potato Biden, he's allowed China to buy into our electrical grid right here in the United States, selling off a major portion of that to Chinese, to the Chinese Communist Party, of which House Speaker Pelosi was also part of that deal as well. So our infrastructure is being sold to our enemy.
Well, it's not only that. China has control of the Panama Canal. People may forget about that. That occurred under Clinton. They've also built a big commercial shipping port. I believe it's in the Bahamas, which they could easily turn over to the military. They're buying up land in the US like crazy, not to create economic zones for their own people, but also to create Chinese cities. There's a place in Michigan that's totally Chinese. They bought up a whole town, many hundreds of acres, to create just a Chinese zone. They bought up, I don't know how many square miles in, I I think it was Washington, or maybe it's Idaho, where they're creating an economic zone for the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, people don't understand what's going on. And this all started under Clinton. It had a reprieve under let's see, under Bush a little bit, and then of course with Trump in office, it slowed down. But now under the Biden Democratic administration, everything's up for grabs. Everything's for sale. You got the money, you got it, baby. And they're buying up real estate like crazy.
Well, there's also there's another verse here that also harkens back to this cultural domination. I mean, there's the economic and geographic whoring out, selling off of the United States. You know, the great whore of Babylon, right? So it's all for sale. We're just a proposition nation. So go ahead and buy. But back to the culture war, which would be like a cultural Marxist dynamic. Verse in chapter 18, verse 22, and the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. Goes back to the first topic you mentioned, the blood of all that were slain upon the earth. It goes back to abortion, perhaps, and it's alluding to all the ceremonies are shut down. There's no more weddings. There's no more funerals. There's no more human celebrations. There's no live concerts, right? You're not allowed to sing in church. You're not allowed to have church at all. It's a powerful chapter.
Well, and essentially what it's indicating is that Babylon no longer exists. It's no longer an influence in the world. It's no longer a marketer of goods. It's no longer an inventor of technologies. When you think of the history of the United States, and I go through this in the beginning of the book too, about the history of the United States, all the challenges that we went through to develop this country, and particularly in the last century, all the horrendous things that we had to go through, from the Great Depression and the World Wars and the Dust Bowl years, which lasted for 10 years and practically destroyed all the agriculture in the country, and on and on and on. And then we came through it all. But we came through it all because of our faith and ingenuity and our patriotic drive and so forth. That doesn't exist anymore. It's waned so badly that, well, we saw that in the last election, you know, how contentious it was. I mean, the sole goal of the Democrats was not to put forth a better agenda. It was to destroy a president and his entire agenda and his entire staff and administration. I mean, it's been slash and burn politics. And you see that in Biden's first day in office. You know, all the executive orders he passed weren't to make things better. Now, maybe in his mind it was, but it was to basically take and get rid of anything that was Trump. Not to take a time to have a committee to study whether or not these things that he passed were valuable or achieving any good or anything. Nope, if it had Trump's name on, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it.
And now people are finding their insulin is more expensive. So yeah. Biden, insulin, or whether it comes to university students being told that, oh, you're going to be replaced by H-1B visa holders from other countries, and your jobs aren't going to be for you when you're done from college. And oh, by the way, we're not going to forgive your debt after all, which I'm I'm glad about.
Well, but remember what gas prices were like under Obama, $4 or $5 a gallon. wait till you see under Biden, because he just announced today that he's putting a moratorium on all oil and gas leases on public land and in the Gulf Coast and so forth. So
Trump made America energy independent in just a very short while, and we weren't at the mercy of Middle Eastern potentates and dynasties. And Trump made America independent in so many areas. We didn't need to have these spies in our universities, like the 1,000 Talents program, where university professors were sending technology secrets to China. There were some arrests made of university professors who were actually there on the payroll of the Chinese Communist Party through the 1,000 Talents program, spy program, to steal technology. But it's because we're being sold to the highest bidder and sold to the Communist Party, aren't we? And what a shame.
absolutely. And you know, if people go to my blog, I've written several articles in the last couple of weeks about this whole issue and where we're headed and what they can expect from a Biden administration. And none of it's good. Okay. Sure, the media is falling all over themselves, fawning over him, and they're going to mislead the public on all the stuff that he's doing. But, you know, the discerning, intelligent person, if they can read between the lines and do a little study, not through Google, but through DuckDuckGo or somebody else, you know, so get away from Google, because they're coloring the whole issue tremendously. And but we're going to see some changes here that even the Democratic voters are not going to like.
Yeah.
And you know, I can't believe, you know, here's the thing. I can't believe that over 50% of the American people were that stupid to vote Democratic.
There's
They didn't. They didn't. But the votes were there. There's a difference.
I feel as if the Democrats had one job. They had to choose their best candidate to put forward to beat President Trump. They had one task. And from the very beginning in Iowa, they accused each other during the straw polling in their first conventions. They accused each other of cheating. At the end of the day, all of them said that every other party had cheated. Even Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota was saying that at the time. Everyone was pointing the finger at each of the others. Of course, Buttigieg, and then the guy, Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire, bought himself a place on stage for one debate. But from the very start, they showed us what they were going to do in terms of cheating. And I think all of this was known well in advance. And then, of course, the Christmas Day bombings in the United States were sort of an unusual anomaly that took out infrastructure and took out cell phone coverage in states far away. And there's some other odd events going on. So in terms of your book, Revelation 18 and the Fate of America, where again can people find that? And when you get your new website, let us know what that is. But can you call out your social media?
Yeah, right now the easiest place, unfortunately, to get it is Amazon. When I get my new website up, which, like I said, I hope it's going to be in a couple of weeks, I'm hoping to offer author direct discounts so that we can get away from Amazon and you know, people don't have to shop there.
In other words, you're taking your own, you're taking the verse, chapter 18, verse 4 to heart. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye not be partakers of her sins, and that ye are not of her plagues." And Amazon's one of those companies. I had to turn off my Amazon Prime subscription, and I've tried as much as possible to cut myself away from Amazon and all the others. Netflix I turned off months ago.
Yeah, the negative side of having my books on Amazon is that even though once I separate myself from her, I can't delist my books. The books wind up staying on there, but I can potentially unpublish them on Amazon. But they will keep the books up there because the deal is that once the book is listed, they don't want it taken off because somebody else might have a copy of the book that they want to sell on there, you know?
Oh, yeah, because there's the used business, right?
Yeah.
It's also, it could be a good way, I mean, if just to promote your books so people come across them while they're looking at other things. But by the way, the viewers might not know this, but James F. Gauss is the author of many, many books. He's a prolific writer, and he led a series of workshops in Rochester and other parts of the state of Minnesota, a series of workshops on his really the great work he did on Islam, which is the truth about Islam. That's the correct title, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, it's called Understanding Islam in the Light of Christianity.
That's right.
And I've actually produced several different versions of that. There's the compendium, which is the seminal work, which has got everything in it. It's more for the student, the real person that wants to study the whole deal, the history and everything. But then I also produced an abridged version for the average reader that just wants to kind of read through and get knowledgeable. And then I've produced a hard cover student edition for high school and college and seminary students. So.
Mm-hmm. And you can find his works again at booksbygauss.wordpress, and look at his blog, ampatriot.wordpress.com, and we'll include those links and more in the description below the video. We'll edit those in at a later date. And would you want to say anything else about this, your book, or about Revelation? And I'll give you the final word. I'll pass the torch back to you.
Well, I would just say that the book on Revelation 18 is becoming scarily pertinent to what is going on in our country, not only in the last few years, but also currently, and where I see it heading under this current administration. And if the church doesn't get its act together and fully repent and turn back to God, and there be a great awakening in this country, we're going to be in big trouble in the next few years. So, I mean, we're already in big trouble, but it's going to get a lot worse and a lot darker. And I don't mean to be so ominous, but that's the way I see it. And that's the way I think God is looking at it right now. And there's got to be some retribution coming sometime soon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Gauss. And it's always fascinating talking to you. It's as if this conversation could continue going in any number of directions. It's been really insightful. And thank you very much for your time today,
Well,
sir.
thank you for your time, Wes, and God bless.
Thank you, sir. I sure need it. God bless you too.